Welcome to the Mindset School podcast. My name is Inga Pakalnishkita. I'm a life coach, neuroscience geek, and entrepreneur. In each week, I will bring you an inspiring topic, easy to use tools to help you become the best version of yourself so you can create the life that is beyond your wildest dreams. Let's get started. Hi everyone, I hope you are all doing well, and I am so excited about today's episode as I have another inspiring guest here. Amirah Zaky is a wellness coach who helps women around the world to overcome and prevent vaginismus so they can confidently have pleasurable sexual intercourse with their husbands. She is also a businesswoman who has turned a struggle into successful online business. In today's episode, we chat about her story, how she got to where she is today, the mindset and stories that were holding her back from having pleasurable sex with her husband, how she overcame vaginismus, and the journey of creating a successful online business. Amirah, thank you so much for joining me in today's episode and coming on the Mindset School podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me here, Inga. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I wanted to give a little overview for our listeners how Amirah and I got connected, and it's a really interesting story. I'm using Kajabi. So Kajabi is an all-in-one platform for online businesses. So one day I was just like scrolling on their Instagram stories, and you, Amirah, came up on there and started talking about your business, and you help women to overcome vaginismus and have a pleasurable intercourse with their husbands. So I was, okay, that's really interesting. I haven't seen anyone talking about it so freely and bringing into the online business. I started following you on Instagram, and just over a couple of weeks, an idea just came to me. I should interview her and have her on my podcast so we can talk about what mindsets have helped you to overcome this struggle and how you then transferred this struggle into successful online business.
Thank you so much. As I said, it's a pleasure to be here. And, I'm grateful that you discovered me through Kajabi. I think Kajabi is amazing. I use it in my business too, just like you. And I'm so excited to discuss mindset from different angles in this episode. Partly to talk about my struggle and how I overcame it. So the mindset that I had to adopt in order to overcome my struggle. And then also later on in the episode, we can talk about how I was able to turn that struggle into a now successful business. So I'm really excited to talk about that and share that with your listeners.
Amazing. Amirah, tell us a little bit more about your story. So where the struggle started and where were the beginnings?
Yeah, so it actually goes quite a long way back. So my earliest kind of memory of this struggle before I even knew that it had a term was actually back in high school when I was kind of really starting to learn more about sex and sex education. I went to an all-girls high school, and in my group of friends we eventually started talking about sex like I'm sure most teenage girls do. We're starting to learn about it for the first time. We're noticing our bodies change at that time. And one of the conversations I had with my group of friends was about someone losing their virginity and how painful it is, and how first time sex for every woman is extremely painful. And then they started talking about this thing called the hymen, which back then I had no idea what it was. And then when they explained what it was, they said it's like this wall, that's how they described it, that covers the vagina, which is a myth, but I didn't know at the time, I just believed it. They described it as this wall that covers the vagina, and when a man's penis enters a woman's vagina for the first time, his penis literally has to break this wall, and there's loads of blood, and it's so painful, and most of the time the woman is screaming in pain. That's what they described to me, which is a huge exaggeration, but again, I didn't know any better. And so I just inherited those stories from them and really believed them. And I was terrified. So they were these horror stories that were so deeply ingrained in me that they affected me so much psychologically. And I just thought that this is something that every woman has to go through. So obviously back then I was a teenager, and I had already made the decision that I was going to save myself for marriage, that I wanted to lose my virginity on my wedding night to my husband. So I knew that that was something that was going to happen in the distant future. So it didn't bother me anymore. And then eventually, the years went by, and then I met my now husband. And before we got married, I'd say a few weeks to a couple of months before we got married, I started thinking about the wedding night, and all those stories came back to me, and that fear came back, and I started dreading the wedding night. So I couldn't really fully enjoy the wedding because I was already thinking about the wedding night and how painful it was going to be. And so, yeah, eventually my husband and I did attempt to have intercourse on our wedding night, and it was painful. It was just like those girls had described. And I know now with hindsight that the reason it was painful for me was because I believed it was going to be painful. And so my beliefs are what caused my reality in that moment. But I didn't know that that was going on, but I know that now. So that's basically where the story starts. And then later on, I discovered that the condition I had was actually a medical condition known as vaginismus. And then I started learning more about it. And then I taught myself how to overcome it. But that's where it starts.
And if you could tell us a little bit briefly, what is vaginismus?
Great question. So vaginismus is a mind-body condition. So I think it's so highly relevant to everything you do on your podcast, everything to do with the mindset. And I'm so passionate about that work as well. So it's a mind-body condition where when you have a certain thought in your brain, it produces a feeling, or you get into a certain state in your body. And what happens subconsciously, or what we call involuntarily, is the muscles that surround your vagina will automatically contract, and those muscles are called the pelvic floor muscles. And if you imagine them contracting, when they contract, those muscles move closer together, so they are in essence squeezing the vagina shut, making the vagina really narrow. So if you imagine the vagina being really narrow, obviously penetration by any object, it could be a tampon, it could be when a woman goes to have a cervical smear test, or it could be during intercourse. So penetration by any object is very, very painful because the vagina is so narrow, or it's pretty much impossible that nothing can go in. So that's essentially what vaginismus is.
So what was the mindset that really didn't help for that struggle?
I would say that the biggest thing that was holding me back was that this was something that I was just going to have to put up with, that I was just going to have to kind of grin and bear it. Like I was just going to have to brace myself. And, when having intercourse for the first time, it's meant to be painful. So I just had to accept that. But because I kept accepting that, okay, it's meant to be painful, I had such a deep fear of pain. I didn't want it to be painful. And that fear of pain just became this kind of vicious cycle that every single time we attempted intercourse and I saw in my reality that it was painful, again, it was just that vicious cycle, and it led me to just want to kind of put off intercourse and just never have to think about it again. I kind of wished that I could click my fingers and it would all be over. But obviously that wasn't what happened, until it got to a point where we'd been married for a year and we hadn't consummated the marriage. Obviously, like I said, we did try many times, but it just wasn't happening, and it was getting worse and worse. And each time we tried, we just got more and more frustrated. There was this kind of huge strain on my marriage. And there were even words of divorce, meaning my husband and I knew that if this kept on going for several more years, it just wasn't sustainable to live in a marriage like that. We were getting frustrated at each other. Having said that, my husband was very, very patient, and he was as understanding as he could be, but he didn't understand what was wrong with me. He didn't know how to help me. He didn't even know it was called vaginismus. As I said, I didn't even know it was called vaginismus until later on I discovered it and learned how to overcome it.
And what was it that inspired you to look or seek for answers and to find how you can help yourself and how you can overcome this struggle?
Yeah, so I felt really broken. I felt like my marriage wasn't complete. Like I felt there was something missing. And, you know, as I mentioned, the words divorce were mentioned in conversation between my husband and I. And I just didn't want this to be a reason for divorce. There are many other reasons why couples get divorced. And some of those can be good reasons. You know, divorce is not always a bad thing. But for me, I just saw this as, this is not right. Like to get divorced for something like this didn't feel right inside me. So I was like, I know, I had this kind of deep knowing feeling that there must be a way to overcome this. So I turned to the internet. I went onto Google, and like I said, this was after a year of being married. I didn't do anything else to try and treat myself. I just thought, oh, maybe one day it's going to happen. I kind of just kept wishing. And the wishing wasn't working because I wasn't taking any actions to cure myself. So it got to a point where it was like almost like rock bottom, really, where I was desperate. I felt desperate to overcome it. So I went online, and I think I just typed something like solutions for painful sex. And I did loads of like reading, and eventually I landed on a website that talked about vaginismus. And when I read that word, it just seemed like this foreign word, and I kind of glanced over it and I thought, that can't be what I have. That's some kind of strange condition. That's not me. Kept on doing some more research, and the word vaginismus kept coming up. So I got curious and started reading about what vaginismus is. And when I read the description of what vaginismus is, it was like this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I have. I can't believe it. Why didn't anyone teach me this before? Why didn't I know about this before? And so I then, when I knew that I had vaginismus, I was like, okay, if this is, and I actually looked it up. I was like, is vaginismus an actual known condition in the medical field? And it's a medical condition. You know, I think some doctors are taught about it, but not all, unfortunately. But I think more and more doctors are starting to become familiar with it because more and more women are coming forward talking about the fact that they have this. And so when I discovered that I had vaginismus, I started looking for solutions or treatment for vaginismus, and I came across a website at the time that was selling a book. The book was called 10 Steps to Completely Overcome Vaginismus, and the book came with a set of dilators. And essentially what dilators are is, another word that they're known by is vaginal trainers. So they usually come in a set of different sizes and they're kind of shaped like a penis. Where the smallest one is similar to the size of like your index finger, and it kind of gradually increases in size to where the largest dilator is roughly the size of an erect penis. And so when I saw these dilators, I saw a picture of them, and there was a brief explanation about how to use them, including things like using lubricant to make it go in easily. They even briefly talked about the fact that vaginismus is caused by the pelvic floor muscles. So if you get this book, the book will teach you how to train your pelvic floor muscles so that you consciously get them to be relaxed, and therefore the vagina will be nice and wide for penetration to be easy. So when I read about it, I was like, this makes sense. It makes sense for me to practice first before attempting intercourse again. So I was in such a rush. I ordered the book and ordered the dilators and had to wait a couple of weeks for it to arrive, because at the time it was only available in the US and I was in the UK. And I was a student back then. I was in, I think, my second year of university. So, you know, it was quite a lot of money for me, but I was like, I need to pay this money to get this treatment. And as soon as it arrived, I was so excited to do the work, to practice insertion, gradually using the different sizes of dilators. And the more I used them, the more confident I got in training my pelvic floor muscles to be relaxed. And eventually, when I, over a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, I managed to get to the largest size. And that was such a big accomplishment for me, because that gave me so much confidence, knowing that I can now have intercourse, because I've proved it to myself. I managed to insert something which is roughly the size of a penis, and it was completely pain-free. There was no pain. So it made me question, why did everyone say that first-time sex is painful? And later on, if you wish, in this episode, we can discuss some of my theories as to why I think other people say that first-time sex is painful. But yeah, that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just curious to hear, like, what was going on in your mind? What were you saying to yourself? Because I understand there was a lot of things that you were worried about. So what was happening in your mind at that time?
I think at that time, you know, when I discovered that these dilators existed,
Mhm.
because I didn't have a clue, the only thing I knew about was like sex toys or dildos, and I didn't see that as something that was relevant to me. It
Mhm.
just made sense. The fact that the dilators were gradual in size, it kind of alleviated any fears I had, because when I looked at the image, the size of the smallest dilator did look fairly small. And the fact that they said in the book that they would teach me how to insert these objects in a pain-free way, that really intrigued me, because my mental association with anything penetrating my vagina was that of it's painful. I just thought, okay, that's the only way
Mhm.
that penetration into the vagina was painful. And once I learned that actually that's not how it's meant to be, and there's a way for it to be comfortable, and the way that it's comfortable is completely in the woman's control,
Mm.
it started feeling really empowering to me. So I was really excited to take the power back into my own hands, to treat myself. Yeah, I didn't question it in any way. I just did the work. I literally read the book religiously, like I followed the steps,
Mhm.
step by step, and just did what they told me to do. And I didn't give up. Like if something was a bit tricky, I was like, I know that this is the cure. I know that this is going to help me. I
Mhm.
just need to keep going. And I allowed like feelings of curiosity to take over my mind. Because, for example, when I was able to insert, actually, they tell you to insert your finger first. So
Mhm.
when I inserted my finger into my own vagina, it felt so strange. I was like, I've never felt inside my body. So that felt so strange, but I didn't let it cause any fear. I just was like, okay, this feels strange. I'm going to be curious about this. So that prompted me to then use the first dilator. And again, it felt strange, but there was no pain. The only thing sometimes that I felt was a little bit of discomfort, because it was my first time trying something new. But as I mentioned, the more I practiced, the more comfortable it got, the easier it got. So I was able to really quickly speed through all the dilators, because I allowed my feelings of curiosity to take over. I was like, okay, I've got the first one in. I wonder what the second one feels like. So that really motivated me to keep going.
So it's more of a mind body connection where you actually have to allow your mind to accept it and to understand what it feels like and to push it away. Any of those fears, what you said, you have replaced fears with the curiosity aspect, where it's like, I wonder what that feels like, and having that belief inside you where you know it's going to work and you're committed to working. So I think that's what you as well you instill in the work that you do for your online programs.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
From my own personal experience, I know that overcoming a challenge creates a ripple effect. Looking back in hindsight, what was the ripple effect created by overcoming vaginismus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that because I had vaginismus and then taught myself to overcome it, that process required me to learn a lot about my body. So looking back, if I didn't have vaginismus, I probably wouldn't know as much about my body as I do now. I probably wouldn't know much about my pelvic floor muscles. So I know a lot more about my body through that process, through that journey, talking about sex or sexual issues.
Mhm.
So I'm not shy. I am quite open when I speak to my followers, when I speak to my clients and to my audience. And many women, when they look at me, they're quite surprised in how open I am, in how I talk about sex so openly. But for me, I've now realized that if I don't talk about sex openly, that's part of the problem. It's actually one of the causes of vaginismus in quite a lot of women. The fact that many women grow up not having a good sex education. You know, most parents don't talk to their kids about sex. My parents didn't really talk to me about sex. Not that I blame them, but I think a combination of things
Mhm.
causes a woman to have vaginismus. So the fact that there are many negative messages about sex from society or in the media, And in certain cultures and religions, talking about sex is a taboo topic. And so when something is taboo, it makes it seem like it's wrong. But now I look at sex as not something that's wrong. It's something that God designed, God invented sex, and God wants us to have sex and wants us to enjoy sex. So I now see it as something that shouldn't be taboo. It's something so normal. We know that pretty much everyone, every adult person is capable of having sex, just like we eat, sleep, and walk and move and talk, which are so natural. Those things are not taboo. I think that sex should fall in the same category. It's something that is a normal, natural human function. And so that really kind of motivates me to talk about it. And I think the more people that talk about sex openly, the less taboo it will be, until it just becomes so normal, to talk about it, at the appropriate age, just like anything really. You're not going to teach a 5-year-old like difficult algebra. Everything is in the right age, and that's the same with sex. At the age of 5, there are certain things that they can know about sex, but you might not teach them the whole thing until they're maybe like 13, 14. So I think everything happens in its stage, but it definitely shouldn't be hush hush or taboo. It should be so normal and encouraged. Obviously, there are certain cultural and religious aspects that can be respected. Everyone has their different views about when sex should be done, but that doesn't mean that we need to judge one another. We can just accept each other's beliefs, but still talking about sex, especially for women, it needs to be more and more common.
I couldn't agree with you more, because when I was growing up, my parents did not talk to me about sex. And that was something that I, seen from the movies, and at night it's just like turning on that channel, that's something naughty is happening, and it's like, oh, okay, this is how it's happening. I think once we don't know what that feels like or how that's going to happen, and then we take the images from our environment, what happened to you, that you heard from your classmates, and really created that fear, created an issue down the line that you had to work hard and overcome it. And as well, it might draw us a very different image of what sex should be, what is acceptable, what is not. I feel that the work that you do is absolutely necessary and so important, because sex is not just sex. Sex is really a crucial part of any relationship that allows you to connect on a deeper level, create a bond, and from that bond we create families and more love in this world. So
absolutely,
it is absolutely necessary. And I believe that any woman who is struggling with vaginismus or any fear of sex, I think they will be really glad to find you. As you did over 10 years ago, when you were looking for answers, and then you came across this book that really taught you how to overcome the struggles. Thank you for doing great work.
Thank you very much.
If somebody is finding themselves struggling with this issue, so either is a woman herself where she experiences fear of sex and vaginismus, or is a partner, a husband, a future husband who has a wife, fiance who have this issue, what would you suggest? What would be the 3 things they could start with?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing I would recommend is that if a woman believes she has vaginismus or thinks that she might have it, or even for a woman who has a fear of sex, the first thing to know and to start really believing is that this condition, vaginismus, is 100% curable. And the reason I say that is because the condition is caused in the mind, and it causes an effect in the body, in the pelvic floor muscles. And we have control over our mind. So when we do start controlling our mind, that we will notice the effect in our pelvic floor muscles. That's essentially what we need to do, is learn how to train our pelvic floor muscles to overcome vaginismus. And so the second thing I would say is part of the work in training the pelvic floor muscles does involve inserting some form of object, to just get used to it. A bit like when you go and work out, you might need to use certain tools to help you work out. That's the same with your pelvic floor muscles. It's a little bit like working out your pelvic floor muscles, learning how to relax them and learning how to contract them. And so part of the work that I did, as I mentioned, is I got a set of dilators. So that's something I would really recommend to women. If you can get a set of dilators, that will really help with doing those insertion exercises. And then finally, what I would say is, especially if someone has a fear of sex, we need to really start believing that first-time sex is not meant to be painful. Because after I did the insertion exercises and then I transitioned to having intercourse again, my first experience of intercourse after the dilators was completely comfortable. There was no pain. And so it made me start thinking, like, why did everyone say that this is so painful? It's not. Sure, it feels a bit weird, it feels a bit strange, because obviously if it's the first time for a woman to have a man's penis inside her vagina, it is going to feel a bit strange and a bit weird. And that's normal for anything that you do for the first time. But as I mentioned earlier, I have a couple of theories, because I've been questioning why do some women have painful first-time sex in the first place? And why are those the stories that are being spread?
Yeah, tell us more about it.
So my kind of theory around why a woman has painful first-time sex is because she wasn't ready mentally, so she didn't have the right mindset before having sex for the first time. And also she didn't do the kind of physical preparation or physical training beforehand. So if a woman, for example, has never inserted anything before having sex and then literally tries to have sex for the first time, for some women it's possible, but for many women they struggle with that. And if a woman notices any kind of pain during first time sex, it can just end up being a vicious cycle. So I believe that women should really practice some kind of insertion before having sex for the first time. It could be with your own finger, it could be with a tampon, it could be going and buying a set of dilators, just to really practice inserting things into your vagina in a safe and clean way, and allowing yourself to train your pelvic floor muscles before having sex for the first time. So as I was saying, if a woman did have painful first time sex, it was because she didn't have the right mindset beforehand. She had a fear, she'd heard those stories and started believing those stories, and also she didn't do the right preparation physically. Maybe she hasn't spent time doing her own self-discovery of her female anatomy. Maybe she doesn't even know where her vagina is, like the actual entrance. So that's part of the physical training that's necessary before having intercourse. So if a woman does the right mental training and physical training, first time sex for her will be completely comfortable. If she's fully ready mentally and physically, first time sex will be completely pain-free. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but it definitely should not be painful to the point where someone is screaming. Like I said, there may be just some discomfort. It probably will feel a bit strange or a bit weird, but there should not be any pain during first time sex at all.
Anything that we do for the first time, it feels a little awkward and we don't know what's going on. And especially if we don't understand our own anatomy, where is what it looks like, what it feels like. So I agree with you that that's one of the reasons why women develop a fear of sex. One thing is to overcome a struggle, but is a completely different story when it comes to putting yourself out there, talk about sex, dilators, intercourse. So what inspired you to do the work that you do today?
Yeah, so it actually started back in February 2019. Back then, I was quite new in my online business. I was dabbling and trying different things in my business. And I was kind of working as a kind of general wellness coach, helping women achieve certain goals. By that point, I'd lost quite a lot of weight. So I was trying to help other women with losing weight or just general wellness mindset kind of thing. And then I started growing an audience at that point, and I kind of had this realization that I was keeping a secret from my audience. There's something that I know inside me, it's like only I know and my husband knows this secret that we've had for like almost 10 years by that point. And I was like, I feel like I just want to be raw and authentic with my audience, to know that I had this condition and to not feel any kind of shame around it, because it was completely normal for me to have it. I also just wanted to raise awareness about it. And just so my audience knew about it. I didn't think that any of my audience would have had the condition. I literally just wanted to raise awareness, to tell them I had this condition at the beginning of my marriage and I learned how to overcome it. So I decided back then that the best format for me to do that was for me to do a YouTube video, because I knew it was going to be quite a long video. I couldn't just share it on Instagram stories. So I created a YouTube video, and then once I published the video, I told my followers on Instagram and Facebook about it. And so I had my audience, you know, back then I think I only had like 200 or 300 followers, but they started watching the video and, you know, messaging me saying, thank you for sharing that. I can't believe you had this, but I'm so glad you overcame it. And then because it was on YouTube, based on the description of the video, somehow people all over the world found my video. And you know, I started getting these like trickles of messages on my Instagram of women saying, I watched your video on YouTube and I have the condition and I'm struggling, can you help me? And over time those trickles of messages started turning into like hundreds of women viewing my video and then messaging me saying, can you help me? And I started just seeing this huge demand in women really needing help to overcome vaginismus. And I didn't know how many people had vaginismus. I kind of thought that it was this rare condition that some women have, but from seeing how many women were messaging me and then watching the video, it made me realize, okay, this is bigger than I thought. There's a lot of women around the world. These women were telling me that they are in so many different countries around the world. And I started at that point, I made a decision like, I'll take a few one-on-one clients to help women with vaginismus. And so I did that. But back then, you know, some women, you know, especially being in certain countries, weren't able to afford my private prices for my private coaching. And I felt like, you know, I don't want to lower my prices, because when I spend an hour with someone, that is worth a lot of my time, because, you know, I am a mom of 2 kids. Sitting down, talking one-to-one is really valuable, my time. So I was like, I know there's so many women, but I don't want to discard them and push them away and not help them. I still want to help them. So I thought the best format would be group coaching, because I could then charge lower prices but have multiple women. And so that's what I did. I just launched a group coaching program, and I had loads of women join that. And after a while, there were still more messages from women saying, I need your help, but I can't afford the group coaching. So I was like to myself, I can't lower my prices for coaching anymore. What should I do? So, you know, the obvious solution was, let me package my knowledge, everything I've learned from my own experience in overcoming vaginismus myself, but also all the experience I now had from coaching private and group clients. Let me put that in a course, because that way it can be a much more affordable price. You know, there can even be payment plans to really help women in certain countries where obviously the income in certain countries is lower than in the Western countries. So I still wanted to help them. So I offered an online course. I created an online course from scratch based on my knowledge, everything that helped me and everything that helped my clients. And I just put it out there in the world. And I've just seen such a huge uptake in women joining my course. And it just shows me that I kind of wish I did it sooner, because these women needed help. Some of them are telling me that they've had it for 4 or 5 years, which is a long time to go through it. So yeah, I started with that one YouTube video. Just really it wasn't even, I didn't even think about it becoming a business. Like I said, I was just a wellness coach helping some women with losing weight. And then I just decided that I need to shift my focus, because I wasn't that aligned with being broad with just focusing on wellness or weight loss. It wasn't aligned at that time for me. And when I really just kind of niched down to focusing on women with vaginismus, my whole business kind of like blew up, because I feel like it's what I was born to do. Like I was born to serve, definitely, but I had that struggle with vaginismus for a reason. Like God is like putting me on this path, saying you had that condition, because if you didn't have that condition, you wouldn't be able to help these women. And God knew that I'm the type of woman that is not shy to talk about these things. Maybe other women who had vaginismus are still too shy to talk about it, so they can't do this work. but God knew that he gave me that condition for a reason. And he helps me to overcome it, because he knows that I can say the words penis and say the word vagina now a lot more confidently than I used to.
Yeah. And you know, I'm a true believer that everything happens for a reason. And what you just explained, that, you know, you went into coaching because, you know, you're called for being in service, and then you decided to open up and share your story. And I remember when I watched that video that you posted a year ago, and I could see how you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable about saying the words penis and vagina and dilators, because it's something that we don't talk about it publicly. And you decided to put yourself out there on YouTube, and those women started to reach out and ask for help. And that's where you've seen the demand that people actually really need this. I believe that it's like, you know, what you said, whatever we believe in, the God, the universe, the spirit, it guided you, it gave you that struggle, and you were the right person to deliver that message.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, I agree with you. I do think everything happens for a reason. And, you know, if you had told me 10 years ago, when I was in the middle of it, when I was struggling with vaginismus, that, you know, 10 years from now, you're going to be helping women overcome it, I really wouldn't have believed you, because I was still going through it myself. But you know, even after I overcame it, once I overcame it, I didn't think about it ever again. Sex then just became really easy and normal and comfortable and enjoyable. So I never ever thought about my vaginismus again. It was, and you know, after that, I graduated from university. You know, I started my teacher training. I then became a teacher, you know, had kids, worked as a teacher for a few years. Again, the thought of vaginismus didn't cross my mind. And it was not until I made the decision to leave my job as a teacher, I found that it was too demanding, too stressful, having to work outside the home but still raise 2 kids and be a good mom and be a good teacher and have a job. It was too much for me. It was really affecting me. So I knew that it wasn't the job for me, and I knew that I had this calling. Like, I really had this deep intuitive feeling towards the end of my teaching career, where I was like, I know I'm meant to be doing something else. I don't know what it is, but I know that there's something else I'm meant to be doing. And I took a big risk. I left my job. My husband wasn't happy about it. You know, me telling him I'm leaving my job, my stable income, you know, it was a good job. Teaching, you know, in the UK is quite a good job. The pay is okay. It can definitely be higher. And, you know, we're in the middle of this coronavirus situation. Many people know that teachers need to be paid more, but it was a stable income. And at that time, it was before July 2017. So I left in July 2017. So this was back in, I don't know, April or May 2017. I was getting that feeling like I need to do something more. So I gave my notice in, and it was a big risk because I didn't have a business back then. I didn't have a backup plan, but I just knew that I had to do something else. And like I said, my husband wasn't too happy. Like, he was worried, like, how is he going to manage on one income? But I was like, my job is taking away from my kids.
Calling, tell me more. Like, I had that calling as well in my own life, but I'm just curious to hear from you. What was it? What were you pulled towards something? Tell me more about that feeling.
Yeah, so I would say that I literally heard a voice. It sounds so weird, but I did hear a voice in my head saying, Amirah, you're meant for more. And hearing that voice in your own head is kind of creepy, but it's also kind of exciting. Like, okay, you kind of, when you hear that voice in your head, those kind of words, it's almost as if you know that that's true because it's always been there. I was probably ignoring that voice for a long time, and just in a moment of quiet, when I kind of quieted my thoughts, I had that voice become louder, like I was meant for more. And it happened at the same time when I was feeling really frustrated in my job as a teacher. Like, I had a lot of stress going on. I actually ended up dreading going into work and dreading being in a classroom. Back then I taught at an all boys school, and, you know, some of those boys, you know, misbehaved in my class, and I just really dreaded having to go to work every day. It wasn't something I looked forward to. And if you think about the feelings of dread, it's not a nice feeling. And if you have a feeling of dread every single day, over time, it really affects you mentally. And it was really affecting me even in my home life, like how I was interacting with my kids, not having enough time and attention to give to them. So having that voice, the combination of the voice saying you're meant for more, and the fact that I didn't enjoy my job, those two things really just drove me to quit my job without a backup plan. But I knew that something was coming, and I knew deep down that that voice was from God. You know, I believe in God, but you know, whatever you believe in, I believe that God was telling me that I'm meant for more. And I think he was like kind of testing me to see, am I going to take the risk? Am I going to, you know, shut down the voice and just stay safe in my job, even though I dreaded it? Or was I going to take the risk, not knowing what lay ahead for me in the future, but knowing that it could be something amazing and exciting?
So at that point, you didn't know what's next, but you knew that the job that you were doing, it wasn't making you happy. You couldn't spend enough time with your kids, with your husband, and it was stressful. And then you had that voice in your head that's told you, well, you're meant for more, Amirah. So what was the next step? What did you do?
After that, I kind of just took a little break. So I left in July 2017. And then for like the summer holiday, so, you know, end of July until beginning of September, I just took a break, didn't really spend much time thinking about it, and just waited for my daughter to go back to school. So she started reception class that September. And my son was quite little. He was like about a year and a half old at that point. And so I was like, this seems like a good time to just spend more time with my 1.5-year-old toddler. You know, my daughter's at school. I want to just be a mum and just, you know, enjoy that, because I felt like it was almost taken away from me because of my job. So I just spent a few months just enjoying being a mum and not thinking about anything else. But then after a while, I was like, okay, I need to start making an income. What am I going to do? So I started, you know, researching different types of businesses, and the online business appealed to me the most because it was like, okay, I can do this from home. That's kind of what I want, because I want to spend more time with my kids, and I don't really want to have to work for anyone else. I want to be my own boss and have my own schedule that can have hours that are flexible around my kids. So I just started researching some different online businesses. I even looked at things like e-commerce and that kind of thing, and dabbled in it for a couple of weeks. But I was like, this is not for me. This is not my passion. This is not something I want to do for a long time. And eventually I came across the concept of coaching online, which I didn't know much about. But then the more I researched it, the more intriguing it became to me. And so I actually had someone reach out to me. I don't know how, but again, I think, you know, God puts these things in your place. Someone reached out to me and she said, you know, I can see that you're in these online groups for business. I actually have a coaching program. And she told me the price for it, and I was like, I can't afford it. And she was like, every year I give out 1 or 2 scholarships to my program. She's like, you can apply, you might get it, you never know. And I didn't think much of it, but I was like, you know, what do I have to lose? So I applied for the scholarship to her coaching program, where she actually trains people to become coaches. And I won the scholarship, which I've never won anything in my life, but I won that scholarship. So I didn't have to pay for her program, and she taught me all the skills on how to become a coach. So her company certified me as a coach, trained me how to coach a woman, especially coach someone, not just a woman, coach anyone, but especially how to coach people to kind of overcome their subconscious mental blocks so that they can achieve their goals.
So that led you into coaching, and that's something as well where it just popped up in your life, and that as well, reading internally that, that feels nice. That's following the curiosity, as you were saying, that you were intrigued by it and you wanted to learn more, and just following that. And that's how you got into coaching. And then, as you said earlier, you were getting into wellness coaching, and then you posted that YouTube video that literally turned everything around in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. That YouTube video changed my life, but it didn't change my life straight away. As I said, I posted that video mostly for my audience to just kind of get to know me and just to raise awareness about vaginismus. And it wasn't until, so that was back in February 2019, it wasn't until October 2019, so quite a few months, I attended an event in California by a man called James Wedmore. He has this program called Business by Design, which I was a part of. And I went to his event called BBD Live. And after coming back from that event, I kind of decided that I need to change my business, that I was in the wrong business, trying to be a wellness coach or be a weight loss coach. It wasn't bringing me the revenue that I wanted. It was like I was getting tiny trickles of income from that. I even created a kind of membership, a weight loss or wellness membership, but I had like one client from that paying me a monthly fee, and it was a low monthly fee because it was like a membership. And I was like, this is not sustainable as a business. And then I heard a few other people online, like online experts, saying like, you really need to niche down to blow up. And I was like, okay, what am I going to niche down to? And I kept thinking about wellness and weight loss. Like I thought that's what I needed to do, but I didn't realize at the time that that wasn't aligned for me in that moment. And because it wasn't aligned for me, I wasn't bringing in the income that I wanted, and I wasn't having the impact that I wanted. And so coming back from BBD Live, literally I had a conversation with my husband, and he said to me, look, Amirah, you know, I know you're bringing in some income from this wellness coaching business, but it's not enough. And my son was getting older by that point. He's about to start school this year. And my husband was like, look, you know, if our son goes to school, you're probably going to have to go out and get a job, because it's not sustainable living off mainly one income. And that really, you know, kind of scared me, that I really didn't want to go back to a job. I definitely didn't want to go back to teaching. And I didn't like the idea of having to work for someone else. So I was like, I need to find a way to make this happen. And literally my husband pointed out the fact that he was like, you've been getting quite a few clients for Vaginismus, because as I mentioned to you, at that time I was focusing on just doing a few one-on-one clients. And that actually brought in the bulk of my income. He was like, why don't you just focus on helping women with Vaginismus? And at first when he said that to me, it kind of confused me, because I was like, but I'm going to have to let go of my other clients in weight loss. Like I did have some clients in weight loss, in the weight loss niche, but I was like, if I let go of them, surely that will mean I'll have less income. But what I didn't realize is if I focused on one that I could do really well, that's where my business would take off. And so I pondered what he said. And at the time, the idea of focusing on helping just women with vaginismus made me a bit scared, because I was like, that's not the only thing I want to be known for. I have so many passions. I can't just help women with vaginismus. But then I kept getting those messages, and I was like, okay, let me take this as a sign. There's such a huge demand for this. Let me just go full in helping women with vaginismus. So I like changed my bio on Instagram, and I said, this is what I do now. And when I really just focused on that, that's when my business kind of blew up. And I think, you know, more and more people watched my YouTube video, and then more and more people found me on Instagram. And it just kind of went from there. And I just, you know, got more and more clients. And the best thing is really just helping. I've helped hundreds of women now overcome vaginismus. And it's something that I never thought would have even been possible.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes, you know, we have those gifts and we overcome a struggle, but it's nothing special. We don't really recognize it. As we talked earlier, that everything happens for a reason. And, you know, you had to go through certain steps and starting to really be in tune with your intuition and probably following the little signs that were coming up into your life. That's what led you to there. Tell me more about the mindset that you had to adapt to launch your business and to put yourself out there.
I would say that I almost felt like it was a duty of mine, like I had to do this, that this is what the women needed, that like my audience needed from me. I had to make it less about me. As I mentioned, you know, when I started thinking about niching down to just vaginismus, I was a bit scared, but I had to take myself out of it, because ultimately, when you create a business, you're there to serve your clients and provide them what they need. It's not really about me and what I need, it's about what they need. I'm trying to solve their problem. Essentially, that's what business is. Someone has a problem, and if you can create a solution to solve their problem, then you can be in business. You create impact by helping someone to solve their problem, but also you can generate income, and it becomes this nice positive cycle where the more people you help, the more income you can make. And it just sustains you as well, because everyone needs money to live. And if you can do a business where you are helping someone while at the same time making an income, it is such an amazing, like, I think the word is like reciprocity, like giving and receiving. So it does feel really, really amazing. And I now see my struggle as a gift, because if I didn't have that struggle, then I wouldn't have this business. I might still be in my job. And, I really now do love the whole being an entrepreneur, having a business, learning. Like, there's so much that I still don't know, but I'm a learner. Like, I love learning. Mm-hmm. And I felt like when I was a teacher, I didn't have much learning to do. Like, I knew what I was doing. It was the same routine day in, day out. And it was becoming quite repetitive, alongside having to manage behavior, which is something I didn't sign up for when I wanted to be a teacher. I just wanted to teach and have everyone in the classroom be quiet, but that's not the way it works. So I was like, I don't want to just manage behavior. And I just didn't feel like it was the right job for me. And I'm so grateful that I get to do what I do now, because I get to fit it in around, my schedule and my kids' lives. And I'm at home with them and I can take them to school, and it just feels amazing.
Once you decided that, okay, it's not about me, it's about putting my clients first and solving their problem, that's where really that shift happened as well in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I now see that sometimes when you struggle with something and then you've overcome it, and then it becomes easy for you, and we kind of forget about it because it's now easy for us. Mm-hmm. We take it for granted, and we think that it must be easy for everyone else. Everyone else knows how to have sex now. There's no need for me to do this business. But what we don't realize is, if I struggled with something in the past, it doesn't mean that no one else struggles with it anymore. There are new women in the world that have this condition, either newly married or, in a new relationship, and are discovering that they have this for the first time. So there is going to be this like endless stream of customers for you, for something that you now find so easy. And it's the best thing when you find it easy, because when you help them, it will be so effortless. As I mentioned before, I was trying to create a business in wellness and weight loss, but it wasn't something that I had mastered fully. Like, I had lost some weight at that point, so I thought I knew everything that I needed to know, but it wasn't easy for me. And so because I hadn't mastered it, it didn't come easily to me to coach my clients on it. Having something that you've overcome, fully overcome, and you feel comes so naturally to you now, is one of the great things that you can coach other people on.
When you started your business, when you decided to really go and niche down on helping women to overcome vaginismus, did you have somebody around you who's trying to talk you out of doing this business?
Not specifically this business, but definitely, talk me out of business completely. Like, when I first decided to leave my job, I mentioned that my husband didn't like the idea of me leaving without, like, he wanted me to stay in my job and try and create a business at the same time and get my business up and running, making good income before leaving my job, which logically makes sense. And I know a lot of people who do that, where they stay in their job, create a business on the side, and once their business is doing well, they can then leave their job. And that makes sense logically. But for me at the time, my thought process was, I can't stay in my job any longer. I dread it and I kind of hate it. I don't want to be there, and I'm not being a good mum to my kids. I can't stay a moment longer. That was my thought process. I was like, I have to leave, even though it was a big risk. So, my husband tried to talk me out of that. And at the same time, my mum, God bless her, she was afraid for me. Like, she was so proud of me. My mum is from Thailand. She immigrated to this country, and she was so proud of me to see me go through high school, go through university, get my certification as a teacher, be a teacher. She was so proud to see that, and so for me to then give all of that up was quite a big deal for her. And she knew that leaving a stable income to then run a business might not be the best thing. She wanted me to just stay in my stable, good job. But as I said, it wasn't for me. So I'd say my husband and my mum tried to talk me out of it, not in a negative way, but I'd say they were worried for me. They were worried
from
that,
the loving point, because they wanted
yeah,
to for you to be secure and have stable income. I think it all comes from that loving
absolutely.
place. And Amirah, what advice would you give to someone who overcame a struggle, but they still don't know whether they could go into the business, but they can't let go of the idea that they can help? So what advice would you give to those people?
I would say that the first thing is, again, just realizing that that struggle you had, you can now see it as a gift, because it's a gift that is going to allow you to create impact by helping someone else, but also create income in your own life. So that is impacting your own life. So it's a two-way impact. So I think that even though someone has overcome a struggle and now finds it easy, we need to remember that part of what we do as human beings is we are social creatures. We are there to communicate with one another. And if someone else is struggling with something and we know how to help them, if we don't help them, we're actually doing them a disservice. I'm sure, like, if you think about your circle of friends or your family, if someone in your friends or your family struggled with the same thing that you're struggling with, and you overcame it, you wouldn't hold back because you love your friend or you love your family. You would tell them, I had that same struggle and this is what I did to overcome it. And you normally, a lot of us would do that so freely and lovingly to our family and friends, and that's fine. But, you know, after a certain time, if you just give to your clients freely and don't create an income, you'll burn out. And so actually realizing that when you create a business around something that you now find easy, it makes you look forward to it because you know that you're a master of it. You know you're not going to get stuck in helping them. And creating an income is beneficial for both people. It's beneficial for the client to pay you and beneficial for you to receive the income, because you know, my mentor, James Wedmore, says that he believes the transformation is in the transaction. When someone makes an investment and pays to get help, they are now invested. They have put money somewhere and they have invested it, and they are going to be so much more committed to transforming. Whereas a lot of the time, if we get things for free, it's actually doing a disservice to give things away for free all the time, because, you know, we didn't put any investment in it. So we're just going to take it so lightly. We're not going to put in the work. And if we don't put in the work, we're not going to transform. And then that doesn't help anyone. So, you know, putting a price tag on your services or on your products, especially if it's a beneficial product, is actually serving someone, because they know that they need to pay a certain amount to get the transformation that they're seeking. And that's beneficial for both the client and the coach.
Yes. Amen to that. It's really good. So, Amirah, now I want to ask you 3 biggest mindset shifts that made a huge impact, whether that's in your business or in the personal life.
So yeah, the first thing would be, I really believe it's important to stop worrying what others think. Especially, you know, in the business that I'm doing, you know, I am putting myself out there. I am talking about things that not many people would be willing to talk about. And I just really had to get over what other people think. I have had people message me and comment saying, it's not right for you to do this work. You know, I am a visibly Muslim woman, and some women believe that sex should never be talked about, or some cultures or religions believe that sex should just stay taboo. I don't believe in that. And so I just have to ignore those comments, ignore what others think, because if I'm helping people, then I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. The second mindset shift is really about how important it is to keep going. If you have this kind of gut intuition about something that you know you're doing right, and you start doing that thing, you're going to come across hurdles. There's going to be obstacles. It's going to be difficult. There will definitely be times when you feel like it's too hard. and it's just too difficult, I can't keep going. But it's important to keep going and just persevere through those obstacles. Those obstacles are like mini tests, just kind of like test you to see, do you actually really want this thing? And if you give up during those hurdles, you might have been so close to getting to that destination. So I really think it's so important to keep going, because you will get there one day, and just to be willing to enjoy the process of learning, and just enjoy the journey as you get to the destination. And then the final thing is not related to business itself, but it is something that I've started learning more and more, is about, I mentioned to you that when I started out in my coaching business, I was focusing on wellness and weight loss. And recently, over the past, I don't know, just like literally just this week, I decided that my battle with weight has a lot to do with my own body image, my own self-esteem. And I really just decided that this week I'm going to adopt a new mindset, which has already produced, and it's literally only been like a few days, it hasn't even been a week, I decided this new mindset. This mindset is already changing me, and the mindset that I've now adopted is to really just truly love and accept my body as it is. And it's just made me feel so happy, because I realized that the reason I was trying to lose weight before was because I didn't like the way my body looked. I was like in this battle, like I was at war with my body. When I look at it, I don't like what I see, and that was just causing negative feelings in me. And I was never at peace with how my body looked. I was never at peace with my eating. And so just over the past few days, I decided that I've had enough of thinking that way, and that it was getting me nowhere. And that's probably why my wellness and weight loss business didn't work back then, because I wasn't in alignment. I didn't have the right thoughts. And so now I've noticed a shift in just accepting it, accepting the bulges, accepting the number on the scale, accepting, things sticking out, of things being where, society says it's not meant to be, just accepting it and just loving it, like literally touching the areas of my body that stick out and saying, I love you and I accept you. And I just felt my whole body relax, as though my body was saying, thank you, like at last, finally, thank you for loving me just as I am. So that's definitely something that I think, a lot of women struggle with body image, whether it's weight or not. You can be perfectly slim, but still hate your body. And I think it's so important for us to just accept our body and only do things if it's going to help our well-being. Like obviously eating right and meditating and working out, those are all good things. But if we're doing those things because we hate our body, then we're never going to get the goal we want. And even if we get the goal we want, we're still going to end up hating our body. We'll end up finding other things that we don't like. So I think just starting from a place of love and acceptance is so, so important.
Oh, yes. Amirah, what's next for you? What are you working towards?
So I'm actually in the process of writing a book, definitely related to vaginismus, but it will be a bit more broad. So the working title for this book is Fearless in the Bedroom, but it might change by the time it's published. So it's going to talk about my story to do with vaginismus. It will be a book to help women who have vaginismus, but also to help women overcome their fear of sex. And then once they've overcome their fear of sex, to really step into empowering themselves in their sexuality and going after pleasurable sex. So I will talk about in the book how to achieve orgasm and how to learn about the different types of orgasm and how to really enjoy sex and look forward to it. Because, some women see sex as a burden, or they don't really enjoy it. They don't know how to orgasm, so they don't see it as this pleasurable thing. So that's what the book will be about. Talking a bit about vaginismus and how to overcome it, but then going more deep in helping women in general to have more fulfilling sex lives.
I can't wait for that book to be out, and the title sounds amazing. That's really, really good. So Amirah, if somebody would like to connect with you, where can they do that?
So Instagram is a great place. So it's Amirah Zaky, which is AMIRAHZAKY on Instagram. But also you can go to my website, which is www.amirahzaky.com.
Amazing. And we'll put that in the show notes so anybody listening on any platform just can simply go, click, and connect with Amirah. Amirah, I have learned so much from you today, and I actually feel the fire in my belly to do more because I truly find you inspiring, and I honestly cannot wait for that book to be out. And I can't wait to see what else you're going to do, because I know that the program that you have right now is probably just the beginning of the impact that you will bring into this world. So I can't wait to see that.
Thank you so much.
If you loved this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. If you are a social creature, take a screenshot of this podcast, include one insight you learned from this episode, and tag me at Inga Bakal. I cannot wait to see your insights. Also, you might want to check out my free audio guide, How to Get Unstuck, which also includes a workbook. You'll learn 3 simple strategies to generate clarity, regain direction, and feel energized. Simply visit ingabakalnishkite.com or click the link in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye now.